What if some of the most powerful medicine in your life isn't found in a prescription bottle, but in choices you make every day? For many men, especially Black men, health becomes a priority only after a diagnosis or healthcare scare. But what if we could change that story? Well, today, as we tape, is National Cancer Survivor Day. And as a prostate cancer survivor myself, I've learned that healing doesn't begin and end in the doctor's office. It happens in our kitchens, in our bedrooms, our relationships, our faith, and our daily routines. So today, we're talking about building wellness, not just surviving illness. I'm Reggie Hicks, and this is the If You Are My Brothers podcast. Stay with us. We'll be back in a couple of seconds. Welcome back. This is our second installment in our four-part series during Men's Health Month. In honor of Cancer Survivor Day, we want to just remind you to join us. Go to our website, ifyouaremybrothers.org. Join us on LinkedIn. You can join us on Facebook. You can become a part of the conversation. And as always, we really encourage you to share, to like, and get the word out because it's so important, particularly on this day as we record on National Cancer Survivor Day. Now, our guest today is Dr. Marvin Randall. He's a physician. He's a public health professional and wellness advocate. He's a graduate of St. George's University in Grenada. Dr. Randall holds a master's degree in both public health and business administration. After beginning his training in internal medicine, he felt a call to focus on holistic health and lifestyle medicine. Through his work at UG Pines Health Institute in Georgia and his practice, Healthy Encounters, Dr. Randall helps people improve their health through nutrition, stress management, and natural healing approaches, and of course, preventive care. And we are so happy, Dr. Randall, to have you. Happy Cancer Survivor Day. And I say happy because anytime we can say we are survivors, as I am, it is a wonderful feeling and blessing. So we want to thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Great, wonderful. Glad to be here. Glad to be here with you and your guests, and hoping to have a good educational time together.
Great, great. And I know we have a mutual friend in Melissa Summers. Well, she's got a new name because she's married, but you come highly recommended. I know Melissa's like, did you get in touch with, did he ever reach out to you? I said, yeah, we're cool. We're doing it. So I will, I will give her a positive report when this is over.
She's definitely a good friend, good people.
Yes, he is definitely good people. So let me ask you, Dr. Rando, when men hear the word health, they think about, what happens in a doctor's office. And then you spent your career helping people kind of understand that health is largely determined by what happens elsewhere. What do you wish every man would understand about that distinction between your lifestyle and the doctor's office?
Well, number one, I think working in the hospital is called healthcare, but it's actually disease care. We're actually helping you with diseases. That being said, number two is health begins at home. Health does not begin in a doctor's office. You go to a doctor's office because you don't have health, and then we're trying to treat you for the disease. So health begins at home is important. And that's why I like to educate individuals about what health is and where it starts. It starts with you as an individual. And we shouldn't be necessarily looking at another individual to take responsibility or accountability for our health, namely a doctor or another professional. Health begins, it's a personal thing. And it's just like anything else, once you don't know what you got till it's gone. So it's very important to see your responsibility, our accountability there to preserve health before we get, well, the opposite, which is illness or disease.
So, in general, just kind of looking at this from high above, what's the most common mistake that you see men in particular make when it comes to their health? And, of course, what are the consequences of waiting too long to make changes?
What I see the most is that we can think that, especially men, that health is by chance. that there's nothing that we can do to preserve our own health. But day by day, hour by hour, second by second, we have an opportunity to make an impact in our own individual lives and with our health. But also for men, especially Black men, we have, I guess, a healthy fear of physicians, quote unquote. But what I see is that sometimes we can wait too long. While we're ill, we know that something is off. We don't go to the doctor, but we also don't do anything to make changes to become better. And I'm not discounting going to the physician. Yes, that's key. Also going to the physician to see what is wrong. There are trained physicians that can tell you this is wrong. This is what you need to do to find help or to get help. But it's also very important to see our accountability and not just leave health or fighting disease by chance.
Now, I was really excited about sitting down with you and having this conversation because I know that the other side of this, the other side of prescriptions and those kinds of things are so important and can really help in not just short term, but long term. But then we run into a lot of terms, holistic, naturopathic, homeopathic, and they're often used interchangeably. So, how do we determine the differences? What are the differences? And what are those distinctions when it comes to improving someone's health?
That's a good question. I think in general, well, I could say in general, holistic, when you talk about holistic medicine, it's a broad umbrella term of how an individual can practice medicine. So, for instance, a medical doctor can practice holistic medicine and they can talk about making changes in diet or doing certain things that aren't considered quote unquote conventional ways of treating an individual. Whereas naturopathic and homeopathic are complementary ways of medicine, so to speak. They're two different frameworks of viewing disease and how to treat them. For instance, naturopathic doctors, they have, in some sense, similar training to medical doctors, much less in some cases, but they deal with more natural type situations or natural solutions to the same problems. So they'll introduce, for instance, nutrition or drinking water, doing hydrotherapy or herbal remedies, so forth and so on. Whereas homeopathic is more like do it yourself kind of thing. You're at home, you know what's going on, you know you got an infection, you go get that herb from the backyard and make a poultice and so forth and so on. So it's different framework of practicing medicine, so to speak. And I tend to gravitate towards a more holistic way of treating medicines, but I can see the benefit of a naturopathic and homeopathic way of highlighting how we can treat illnesses.
Do you think, because I noticed that there are some doctors that there's a different letter for the doc after their title, or is it MP or
Yeah, there's MDs, the DOs, osteopathic medicine doctors, and then there's, of course, medical doctors, MDs, basically.
so? Could you have one or the other, or do you see people that maybe have two, or like an OP or homeopathic doctor and then a medical doctor, or can you just have the one?
Nowadays, if you go to the hospitals, you see white coats, you see MD, or you see a DO. And nowadays, there's little distinction between the two. They all do the same thing at the end of the day. They may have different backgrounds and training, like a DO will osteopathic doctor or a doctor from osteopathic medicine versus allopathic, that is. They'll do more training on, say, for instance, understanding more about the bones or understanding more about the system, natural systems, and how to help the body to heal itself. Whereas allopathic medicine, MDs are mostly, we use medicines, medications, or therapies that will help the individual rather than trying to have the individual see, okay, this is what's wrong. This is how it can use your own structure, your own body to heal itself. I think nowadays there's no distinction between the two, MDs and DOs. You can go to the same hospital and one hospital and they have the same DOs and MDs in the same department working together doing the same thing.
So if you see the DO, don't think you're not getting right. Because I've had, yeah, I had some people say, "Oh, I don't know about this DO behind." Is this a real doctor? Or yes, it is a real doctor.
Yes, he or she is a real doctor. They're trained just as much as the allopathic doctor, but in a different framework, different foundation.
All right. Speaking of framework, I'm going to get real with this thing. A lot of people I know, and let me just say I'm one of them, feel like the question of supplements, if I'm taking supplements, that I'm having this holistic approach to my health. Where do we kind of run into issues when it comes to that? And I'm going to share some of the things that I'm actually taking because I want to get your feedback on this.
Now that falls in the realm of more homeopathic. It is holistic, but more homeopathic. Like, okay, I know that I'm short in, say, for instance, selenium, and I can take a selenium capsule or something like that. That's more homeopathic. I'm doing it myself. That being said, there is a place for that. I know, for instance, 95% of individuals in the US are magnesium deficient. And I tend to say if there's a need for it to get you up to par, then yes, you can use certain things, supplements, or even herbal supplements. A lot of herbs, for instance, that are very high in magnesium, for instance. But at the end of the day, I think we can overdo it. We can be on one extreme where we're saying, oh, we're not going to use any supplements. Or the other extreme where it says we use supplements every day. And the body, we're not made to depend on things as a supplement to our diet. We can get most of our macronutrients and micronutrients, vitamins and minerals from the foods that we eat on a daily basis.
What's the issue if you are taking a lot of supplements and you're taking them every day and you're thinking, oh, I'm healthy because I'm taking, let's just say, for instance, turmeric, and I'm taking this 500 milligrams. I'm taking it every day. And is this what I'm doing? Is this a good thing or?
It can be a good thing, especially for inflammation, and it can help to heal the liver. It's very good for detox. Like it's very good for phase one and phase two detox of the liver. It's good for a whole bunch of things. However, taking too long at a time, or too much frequency and length at which you're taking it can affect other things in the body. For instance, turmeric is known to be an iron chelator, which means that it can take out the iron out of your body. And that's a bad thing because you need iron to make your red blood cells. You need red blood cells because you need oxygen. You need oxygen because you need oxygen to the brain and oxygen to the heart. And if you're low in oxygen, it leads to fatigue, to heart issues, kidney issues, so forth and so on. So you want to be careful with how much you're taking. And I can't tell you, you're Reggie, I'm Marvin. A teaspoon for me a day might be a problem for me. A tablespoon for you might be, oh, I'm fine with that. You know, your body would not react to it. But you do want to be careful with how much you're taking on a daily basis. And it's not just turmeric. I've met friends, for instance, with golden seal. And during COVID, they were taking golden seal just to like treat themselves. They were taking it for the entire year. And at the end of the year, they developed dizziness. And golden seal can cause dizziness. And for some individuals, they can only take 2 weeks before stopping because it can cause that dizziness. So you want to be careful with taking too much of these things. Like I said, you can find most of these phytochemicals that you want from these supplements or these macronutrients, micronutrients. You can find them from your foods themselves.
Yeah, I know my wife started to add turmeric to what we're eating, beans and rice and other things. And if we're taking these supplements, and I know that when you go to the doctor for a checkup or whatever, they always ask what medications that you're taking. I noticed too that some are starting to say what supplements are you taking as well. And I think it is probably important to list what you're taking and how often because sometimes I start taking it, or the doc may say, oh, you're vitamin D deficient. So I take a vitamin D supplement every day. And like you said, I'm not sure when to stop or how should I moderate this? You just kind of end up taking it and taking it, thinking, oh, as long as I take my vitamin D I have here and it's D3 and it's 50 mcgs or 2000 IUs, that my vitamin D is going to just shoot up and I'm going to be okay. Black folk are vitamin D deficient. But what you're saying is that these two need to be monitored and there's a cutoff, I guess. I mean, they're not a cutoff, but you need to know kind of where you are, what is it actually doing, and a plan to deviate away from, because my other issue is, these supplements are all over the place. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know. Is this a good supplement for me? Is it not a good, that kind of, and I know there's been some recalls on supplements. So what you're saying is that we just need to be cautious and treat it like we treat our medication. Is that correct?
Yeah, not necessarily like you treat medications. Obviously, they can have a more beneficial, quote unquote, side effect profile, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So you want to be careful with how much you're using vitamin D, for instance. If you take too much of it, it can cause vitamin D toxicity. Too much vitamin C can cause toxicity. Too much selenium can cause toxicity. As a matter of fact, there's one European country, they banned Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts are super high selenium, but too much selenium can cause selenium toxicity. And people were just basically gorging themselves on Brazil nuts to the point where they're like, no, no, no more, no more. We can't, we have to ban. Similarly, with a lot of vitamins, for instance, I know like some elderly individuals take a lot of multivitamins, multiminerals. But what that does when you do that, when you take too much multivitamins, multiminerals, you stop eating because your body says, I'm already full. I have the macronutrients, I have the micronutrients. So they tend not to eat. And that could be a problem in and of itself. So yes, what you're saying is you want to have a balanced way of thinking about this. Supplements, you don't have to, most of them, you don't have to take every day. Obviously, if there's a need, yes, take it until there isn't a need, but always check where's my vitamin D level? Where is my XYZ level? And something like vitamin C, am I having side effects? Like, for instance, magnesium. If you have too much magnesium, you tend to have like watery stools. If you start to notice that, you know what, maybe I need to cut back on this magnesium. Those are things to look for.
That's a good thing to keep in mind because I'm like taking this stuff and I'm like, you know what, I need to maybe pull back and reassess and get with my healthcare provider and say, hey, well, doc and say, okay, here's where I am, what's going on. I do have one more question. NAC. I started taking this around COVID. Everybody was saying, oh, you got to take NAC for COVID. So tell me a little bit about this.
And acetylcysteine. So that is a precursor to something called glutathione. And glutathione is a very good antioxidant that your liver actually makes. So you can actually stimulate your liver with NAC, the supplement, to make more glutathione. And glutathione is very important for fighting infections, for fighting cancers, a lot of things. And it's a very good antioxidant. Remember when President Bush was talking about drinking bleach or something like that? He said something to that effect, right?
Oh, you mean Trump? Yeah, Trump, right?
That's Trump. That's Bush. Sorry, Trump. We're talking about drinking bleach. Your body does not make bleach, but it makes something similar in that you can use it to fight infections. And glutathione, for instance, or superoxide dismutase are these things that our body can make to fight off infections, even fight cancer, so on and so on. So you taking that enables your body to make basically a defender or defense or a type of weapon against the coronavirus or whatever viruses that are out there. Your body makes that glutathione to fight these infections, infectious agents. But you can use NEC to actually stimulate the liver to do that.
How do you know how much to take, when to take it? I mean, is it an everyday thing or how do you determine? Maybe I'm taking too much of it. Are there side effects or is there blood work or how do we determine kind of what this thing is doing to us over time?
I usually counsel people to take it. Say, for instance, you notice that, oh, yeah, I'm getting a sore throat or something coming on. I usually tell individuals, take it at that time. Or say something's going on, go around in your office where you work, or something's going on in your home, and you're like, you know what, I got to protect myself. Take it for that time, but take it for, say, 3 to 6 weeks, not everyday thing, because you can have side effects, and individuals can have different side effects. Say, for instance, individuals who have allergies. You can have a peanut, I have a peanut, and your reaction from a peanut is asthma attack. My reaction from the peanut, my throat starts closing up, and I have skin rashes. Same food item, but different ways of reacting to it. So I can't necessarily say, yes, you'll have across the board certain things like that can cause like cold-like or flu-like symptoms if you take too much of it. But at the end of the day, you can also have personalized responses to too much NAC.
When you're looking at supplements, are there resources available to help you and guide you through the maze of these supplements? And a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, go on Amazon to get them. You go to Walmart, they got like a whole shelf that's normally locked up. If you can find somebody on it, right? So are these supplements okay? Or are there better supplements like anything else? There's some really good ones and there's some not so good ones. And how do we find that out? How do we determine that?
That's a good question as well. And most of it is you got to do your research and what's available around you as well. I won't name brands, but at the end of the day, there are some that are better than others. But the ones that are better are more expensive, of course. There's ones that are less expensive than the more expensive ones that are even just as good. So you want to definitely do your homework. Also, you want to say, all right, if I'm not going to touch that supplement, can I get it from somewhere else, like from a food item? Or from an herb. For instance, you can get a lot of vitamin A from something called stinging nettle. You can get a lot of vitamin C from moringa. You can get a lot of iron from moringa as well. Blackstrap molasses is very high in iron. I've seen people within 2 weeks, they're low in iron or their ferritin levels are low, which is a storage amount of your iron. They're at 2, within 2 weeks, they're at 38. 38 is normal, basically, high normal. So you can definitely find natural sources or quote unquote food sources to get your iron or vitamin C or even vitamin D. You can do that. You can find sources, natural food sources for that as well.
Where I don't have to stay out in the sun all day and work on my tan.
You know, that is the best way to make vitamin D. Most important way to make vitamin D is from the sunlight. And you can actually make 200,000 IUs of vitamin D in just one sitting, like say 20 minutes. But the thing is, your body operates better with the sun than from a supplement. And not only that, when you store that vitamin D, you can store it for up to 6 to 8 months or more. So I can get all my sunlight in the summer, like a week or two in the summer, and store all my vitamin D from that time.
So it really does help to take time and stop and kind of reset, get in the sun, sit on your patio. And that also, I would imagine, helps with stress and everything else. You're kind of having this come into your body. And well, I didn't know that 20 minutes is, and that's not much for most people. And then you just store it on top of that. That's great. Wow. And when it comes to Black folk, we are always, it seems to be very vitamin D deficient. And there's always something my doctors, got to get the vitamin D up, which I understand. Let me ask you this. We're gonna deviate. And then at the end, I'll ask you, if you have some resources for our viewers and listeners. I've been asking during this men's health special, all of our guests, their take on the GLP-1 weight loss option. So I'm asking you, what is yours as it pertains to that? Everybody wants the pill, and they got a pill now. I'm like, if you can afford it, insurance will pay for it.
My honest opinion is this, is that when I talk about these things, there's a saying, give them something better. And the GLP-1 is not the better thing when it comes to weight loss. It's not the best thing, and it's not even the better thing to weight loss. Now, there are a lot of side effects to GLP-1s. GLP-1s are called glucagon-like peptide agonists. So it's an agonist to something in your body. It acts like insulin, basically. And basically what it does, it slows digestion, but it helps you to take in more of what you were just eating, essentially. But taking too much of that or stimulating too much of the GLP-1s in our bodies can affect the way the body works or functions, in that it can retard your digestion. So, for instance, your peristalsis, or the movement of your food from one end of the body to the next after you just ate it, it'll stop that. And you cannot eat. Yes, you lose weight. And that's the reason why you're not losing weight, because you really cannot digest your meals. You're either getting rid of that meal, and it's not fully digested, or it's just stuck there. And basically, your body, instead of receiving the nutrients that you should be receiving, now the food is stuck and it's not moving at all. You're not receiving it, not assimilating those nutrients from the food you just ate. So at the end of the day, you could be malnourished using a lot of the GLP-1s, but also it can affect a lot of other systems, causing constipation and GI tract disturbances and so forth and so on. So but this is what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you not to go to your doctor and ask for your GLP-1. What I would just say is that there's something better. You can do something better. And we also figured about the simple things like exercise or just changing our diet. We think that there is a magic pill, a magic bullet for everything. But at the end of the day, that bullet can kill you. You want to be careful of indulging in this mindset that a pill can solve all our issues.
Yeah, and I've heard stories about too that when people are off it, like anything else, they go back to gaining the weight. And to your point, I was on a diet thing at a station and we were promoting it and it was basically limiting your food intake to like 1,500 calories or something like that. But then you were taking things to satiate your appetite. And yeah, I lost like 20 pounds in a month. But the one thing they said, well, don't exercise. I'm like, what? He said, because you're too weak you may fall out. I'm like, okay, that doesn't. But then again, when I got off of it, I actually picked up more weight than I did on the front end. And so that gets to my next question about nutrition and disease prevention. How much of what we're seeing today, from heart disease to certain cancers, can really be traced back to chronic inflammation and lifestyle choices? And what are the biggest inflammation triggers that people don't realize that they're dealing with, maybe in food or drink or nutrition?
Good question. Good question. And I think foundationally, you've got to think about lifestyle being number one when it comes to chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation leading to disease. So, for instance, cancer is a disease that is it's inflammatory disease, so to speak. But what's at the foundation of that is lifestyle choices. That being said, simple things. I don't know if you ever heard of the acronym New Start. I tend to use that sometimes in my presentations, and it stands for nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. Those are honestly the simplest things that you can use on the planet. And wherever you are, if you're in a remote village in Africa, if you're in a favela in Brazil, if you're in Seal, Alabama, where I am, or wherever you are, Mr. Reggie, you can use some nutrition, some exercise, some water, some sunlight to heal. That being said, most of our diseases, even cancer, I read an article once that says we often think that cancer, for instance, which is a lifestyle issue, we often think that cancer is a genetic disease. But it says that 5 to 10% of cancers are attributable to genetic predisposition, whereas about 95 to some people say 100% of our cancers are due to lifestyle matters, cigarette smoking, diets and exercise, infections, and things like that. Basically, most of our illnesses, including cancers, are based on our lifestyle choices. And when you talk about chronic inflammation, you asked about what foods. Well, when we talk about nutrition, for instance, we often talk about how a whole food plant-based diet, a more plant-centered diet, is very important for helping you to mitigate issues when it comes to lifestyle diseases. For instance, chicken. I know I'm stepping on toes today, but chicken and eggs are number one when it comes to something called arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid is a compound that our body actually makes. Let me start by saying inflammation is a normal way our body heals. We cannot heal without inflammation. And every day we hurt ourselves. Sometimes you don't even know your body's actually healing itself through inflammation. Now, arachidonic acid in our cells, we have this compound and we can use that to create these compounds for us to heal. However, when I take in more arachidonic acid, my body says, okay, I gotta use this up. And when I use this up, I'm gonna create more inflammatory molecules. And it causes inflammatory issues in my body. Now, a high meat diet or a high flesh diet, so to speak, number one on the list is chicken. Number two on the list are eggs. They're very, very high in arachidonic acid. So the more arachidonic acid I take in, the higher my inflammation will be. And then on top of that, if I'm frying it with oil, if I'm doing other things to it that increases the arachidonic acid, then I'm going to have more arachidonic acid than I need to be. And then I have things like lupus or joint aches and pains and you name it. So increasing my arachidonic acid then causes more inflammation. And then I'm trying to fight inflammation by taking other medications that actually causes more issues. Like say, for instance, aspirin. When I take aspirin, it actually decreases the compounds that comes from arachidonic acid. But when I take aspirin, that can cause ulcers and that can cause heart issues. So I'm trying to fight one thing without stopping the thing that I'm doing to cause the thing in the first place.
Wow. Yeah, I got to rethink my whole egg thing here.
I used to bodybuild and I used to have like 6 eggs a day, you know? And not only the 6 eggs, I used to have my chicken and I had all these things. So imagine how much arachidonic acid I was having without knowing. So it's about being more knowledgeable. This is one thing I'm not saying. If you think eggs or if you know eggs to be a good source of B12 even, if that's a good source of B12 for you, I'm not telling you to come off of your eggs, but just be careful, be mindful of one, how you prepare it, but number two, the amount that you're having per week, for instance.
What if you're having a boiled egg a day in the morning?
And that is for someone with, I believe I never got tested, but I believe I have something called familial hypercholesterolemia. Whereas I even look at an egg and my cholesterol goes up. For some people, just one egg can be a problem. But for some individuals, they can have 1, 2, 3 eggs a day and not have a problem. Yet the issue is not just the cholesterol, it's also the arachidonic acid, among other things. So you do want to be careful, be moderate with things like that. It's knowing that if this is something that's very beneficial to me for my health, I want to be very careful with how much I'm having. Too much of a good thing, again, is a bad thing.
Right. And I think we do have whole grain oatmeal from time, not the stuff that you get like the quick oats or whatever, stuff you really got to actually cook, and probably alternating more of that, because what happens is you get into a routine, boil an egg, and then you got turkey bacon, and that becomes your breakfast. Then every now and then, well, like we don't have any eggs, so let's have oatmeal, but we need to add in more of a different type of breakfast going forward. So as we get ready to kind of wind down, I do want to ask you about prostate cancer. You know, this is even though we're doing our men's health series and really being more general in how we can stay healthy as men, we do want to talk a little bit about what role nutrition, exercise, weight management, and inflammation play in supporting prostate health.
Good question. Very good question. Okay, so I love this because my father, on my side, him and all his brothers, he has six brothers, all of them had prostate cancer. He had two sons. I'm one of his sons. Anytime my brother has a urinary tract problem, he's, oh, my prostate. And I'm like, no, no, relax, relax. Because we're very sensitive. We're very sensitive about the prostate. And my grandfather, on mom's side, he also passed away with prostate complications. So we're very, very mindful about these things, and I am too. I made changes in my diet and a lot of things in regards to mitigating my risks when it comes to that. I will also say this, that we often blame testosterone as a cause of prostate growth, or most of our treatments, what we use to help to mitigate or to decrease the growth of prostate or to shrink the prostate, we use testosterone lowering medications. But think about this. I want you to reason with me. Who has more testosterone, a 20-year-old male or a 60-year-old male? Okay, so why isn't a 20-year-old male getting prostate issues? If testosterone was the link or the cause of prostate issues, why isn't a 20-year-old male getting a lot of prostate cancer? And the flip side is, okay, a 60-year-old male, why am I using testosterone lowering medications in a 60-year-old male to shrink his prostate? That, for me, if you're following my line of reasoning, testosterone is not the cause of prostate growth. What can cause the growth of prostate? We often don't talk about high insulin levels. Insulin is a growth hormone. Insulin is something that causes tissues to grow. The more insulin I have, the more the tissue grows. So, for instance, diabetics can have an increased growth in the prostate or other tissues. There's another thing called insulin growth-like factor, IGF-1, which is also, well, it's stimulated by insulin, also stimulated by growth hormone. It's also stimulated by high protein diets, protein-rich diets. So whenever I eat a lot of fresh foods, for instance, or meat diet, it increases IGF-1, also increases growth hormone, among other things. And that can cause the growth of the prostate as well. High inflammatory foods can also cause growth of tissues as well. It talks about cancer being an inflammatory process as well. So that being said, we have to see the link between not just testosterone and growth. Of course, if you're a bodybuilder and you're taking too much testosterone, that's a problem, of course. But you also want to take a look at the foods that we eat and the things that we do. So decreasing your blood sugar, for instance. We also know that increased blood sugar causes growth of tissues. Cancer, for instance, cancer feeds on glucose. We've known this in the 1920s. So the more sugar we take in, the more the quote unquote tumor grows. It's said that Otto Warburg, he had what's called the Warburg effect, where it says that tumors take in 200 times more glucose than the average cell. So you want to think about that decreasing sugar, decreasing things that increases insulin in general, so sugary beverages and so forth and so on, decreasing high protein rich diets as men, especially as we age, we should try to decrease the amount of proteins that we're taking in, especially the high meat diet, so forth and so on. But also increasing things that are anti-inflammatory. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, cabbage, kale. These are very good for fighting cancers in and of themselves, but also very anti-inflammatory. Increasing things that are very high in zinc, like pumpkin seeds are very high in zinc. A handful of pumpkin seeds for a man, every time we have an ejaculate as a man, we lose a whole day's worth of zinc. So replacing that with pumpkin seeds can be very helpful. Believe it or not, some men don't like it, but soy or tofu is very good for men for mitigating issues when it comes to the prostate. It has something called phytoestrogens, but don't believe the hype. You don't become a woman. It helps to block certain receptors of the prostate that helps your cell not to grow or to expand, or whether it's benign prostatic hyperplasia or prostate cancer. And there are a lot of things. I can share some things. I can go to where I'm currently am. It's a place called Uchi Pines, and it's a place where we treat individuals naturally And you can actually find on their website counseling sheets, and the counseling sheets will tell you, okay, you have prostate cancer or prostate growth. This is what you do. It tells you about natural herbs you can use or different foods like tomatoes. Tomatoes are very high in something called lycopene, and lycopene is very good for the prostate as well. There's a lot of things that you can do. If you don't like tomatoes, then eat some watermelon. If you don't like watermelon, then well, that's your fault. That's your problem. But you can have a lot of red things to you can eat for lycopene, basically, and other things as well. You can go on the website and find. I can share that with you, brother Reggie, and you can share that with your audience as well.
And is that ugpines.org? Is that where you go, or what's the website?
Yes, UT Pines, www.ucheepines.org. So utpines.org.
And we'll have that in the show notes too, so folk can take a look. And we're gonna have you come back because there's got to be. I've seen your presentations. Maybe we get you on to do one of your presentations as a part of this. We definitely want to talk more about prostate health and other things as we get through because we can't. It's hard to do this in one show. I get it, but I had two more questions. One is, can you give me a situation where you had someone come in and you talked about the black strap molasses, and you had someone come in and they were just over the moon and everything. I mean, high cholesterol, maybe they were diabetic. And how did you change habits to get a person back to better health? Do you have a story, I guess, of someone that you've seen that really got turned around?
Yeah, I can name a few. One recent person, she had a first bout of lung cancer, and I think it was the right lung. And then 5 years later, after chemotherapy radiation, she had the same lung. She had lung cancer again. She says, I'm tired of the chemo and all these things. She said she wanted to give up, and she said, no, I'm going to try natural this time. And she came to UC Pines. We met her and we treated her with natural remedies and things like that. And within 6 months' time, she had nothing on CAT scan, nothing, to show that there was a tumor or anything on the lung. It was completely gone. And I can name other stories like that. For instance, I can, one person who had prostate cancer, stage 4 prostate cancer, had gone to his lungs, gone to his liver, and he was very emaciated. He had no energy, and he was supposed to spend 10 days with us here at UC Pines. And he said, you know what? After the seventh day, and we usually do 2 blood works. We do a blood work on the first day, the first Monday, and then the last Friday. So he said, you know what? I just want to go home. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die at home anyway. And I should backtrack in saying that he came with a PSA of over 400, so close to 450. And since 2015, he's been battling, going to chemotherapy, doing radiation, doing immunotherapy. And he was on immunotherapy when he came in, and it went to 0, then to 200, then to 300, and close to 450. Within a week, he went home. He got blood work done on Monday and then blood work again on that Friday. So within a week, he went home on that Monday. I called him on a Monday. His PSA was half of what it was. He was so happy, so elated. He said, and he had more energy. He was going out in his garden, doing this thing. Another month later, it was another half. Another month later, it was half. The last time we spoke to him, it was a 16. His PSA was a 16. So I started doing more natural lifestyle, holistic medicine in 2020. And I wouldn't imagine have seen these things or seen these quote unquote miracles in holistic or in more allopathic medicine scenery or in the hospital, so to speak.
Wow, that's incredible. Incredible. One last question. So I would like you to challenge our audience. Give us one thing or maybe two every man should either stop doing or should start doing. One commitment we can make over the next 30 days that will help us to improve our health. If you had to charge and say, okay, let's do this or do these two things, what would it be? And stop doing these two things.
Well, one thing I would say, and this is more so, it takes an intentional effort for us to do that, is just to stop believing that we can take care of things on our own. We need help. As men, we need help. It's important to know when you need help. The first step to transformation is acknowledging that we need help. And sometimes we don't until it's too late. I'll tell you this, my father, he was a fireman. I grew up in Jamaica. He was a fireman in Jamaica when he came here. He was very stressed because he couldn't find a job and couldn't work doing the things that he wanted to do. And he was doing things that he didn't like doing. And one day he went to work and he had a very, very severe high blood pressure, like 180s, 190s. And he went downstairs and they measured his blood pressure and he told him to do this and do that. And he was like, he took it for granted. He was like, yeah, 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 okay. The next day, he had a severe stroke. This was 90, 98, 99, and he never regained his abilities to walk like he wanted to or to move his left side of his body. Those are 20 years that he never got back. You know, you can never get that back. A guy that was very active in his early 40s loses the function of his left side of his body. So always, you know, seek help and know when to seek help and always seek help when you need. So that's one thing. Number two is, and I really understand that there is a mind body connection. And maybe sometime we can talk about that. But most importantly, the spiritual aspect of health and life is very key. And that's what's missing in the hospitals, I believe. We can always talk about the physical aspect of healing, but we miss out on the spiritual aspect. And one without the other, you're missing out. It's like having peanut butter with no jelly. It's like you gotta have the jelly with the peanut butter, man. You can't do that. But when it comes to that, I think one thing I would encourage someone, if you have an illness and if you're trying to battle through making changes in your life, spend the next 30 days talking to God about your health. You know, God wants you to heal more than we want to be healed. And He has the solution. The one who created the body has a solution for healing the body. So, next 30 days, whatever it is, you know, just like we spend 30 days trying to exercise or trying to eat better or whatever, spend those next 30 days, say, God, I want to start off a foundation with you when it comes to healing. If you put the first things first, then everything else will fall into place. Yeah. So, next 30 days, I challenge you for all men, I challenge you just ask God for that healing, ask God for help. That's where it starts. Not just for healing for diseases, but ask God for health in general.
I think that's great because that was going to be my one of the things that I did have to ask, that making lifestyle changes, doing the things we know we should do and exercise, new start, and just really it's more than for most of us is in us. You know, we tend to want to try to do it ourselves. And I think that's great advice and good counsel to understand that there is a higher power that made you, that loves you, and you can ask for help and tap into that to make those changes. Because I tell you, it's hard. But I've heard people say that I tried everything to stop smoking until I prayed about it. And the sensation or the need to smoke just dissipate. And smoking, they say, is harder to kick than heroin in some instances. And so I think that that's something that you're right, particularly men, we want to do it. We want to get it done ourselves. We think we can handle it. And we just need to step aside and understand that it's not all on us. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. So, Dr. Reynolds, thank you. I'm going to let you go and we will be back in touch. I guarantee you. And again, if there are other resources, you can send them to me. We'll put them in the show note to make sure that everyone knows how to get in contact with you and some of the resources that you shared. And we just appreciate you spending some time with us on this National Cancer Survivor Day.
Thank you so much for that and for inviting me as well. And looking forward to being here with you once more. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, you're on the list now, Doc. So, as we close today's conversation, I want to leave you with this. We spend a lot of time planning a vacation than we do planning our health. This is a time we all looking at vacation, right? If it's down the road or out of the country, you know, yet our health determines whether we'll be able to enjoy the people and places and moments that we love the most. And Dr. Randall reminded us today that wellness isn't built by one doctor's appointment, one supplement, one New Year's resolution. It's built by the small decisions we make every day. It's built by our faith. It's built even above us to know that we can tap into the God that made us to help us. And that, again, as he said, leads to a lot of other things. It leads to changing the way we eat, exercising, and doing some of the things that's so hard, managing our stress. So I want to thank Dr. Randall for being here. And if you're listening today, don't let this be just another podcast episode. Let this be a starting point. Choose that one thing that you heard today and commit to it for the next 30 days. One change, one step, one healthier choice. because awareness without action can change nothing. We say that all the time. And if this conversation has helped you, please share, subscribe, tell another brother about the show. You can visit us at our website, ifyouaremybrothers.org, to learn more about the project. We have a documentary and, of course, the podcast and all our community engagement efforts. And you can also go to the website if you want us to come to speak at your church or your civic organization, fraternal organization. We'll be happy to do that as well. And If You Are My Brothers is dedicated to turning prostate cancer awareness into what we like to call health action. And it is a project of the nonprofit 501c3 organization Straight Street Media. You can learn more about Straight Street Media at straightstreetmedia.org. And that being said, we always ask you if you would make a contribution. You can help us do what we do by making a small monthly contribution, maybe of $5 or $10, or maybe you want to do a one-time contribution. It's very easy for you to do. So we put the link in our show notes, the different ways that you can give. There's a QR code. You can visit our website. You can even mail us a check. So we want to thank you in advance for supporting our efforts. And don't forget, we do have our very own commemorative If You Are My Brothers mug. Thank you in advance for making a contribution. Special thanks to Danny Garcia Pozo. Thank you, Danny, for all that you do. Also, Zach Reynolds at Borkhouse Productions for doing our opening. Remember, this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice. Always talk to your healthcare provider. Thanks for being a part of our second installment of our Men's Health Month special series. We'll be dropping one every Wednesday. We've got heart health coming up with my very own cardiologist, Dr. David Montgomery, will be joining us here in the conversation. And remember that somewhere another man may be waiting to hear exactly what you heard today. So again, share, subscribe, spread the word. Till next time, take care of yourself. Let's take care of each other. Stay healthy. Always, always keep the faith. And remember, especially to all my cancer survivors today, that we are in this fight together. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Peace.